and today I have the great honour of being joined by the one and only Christian Morris, who I'm sure you all know and love. So thanks for joining me today, Christian. I really appreciate you giving me your time. So you have your Odyssey channel, Christian. It's Christian Morris TV. It's a great channel, giving good, humorous and cutting commentary on the state of the nation. For example, Helen is great. Leo's a ledge, which I've seen more and more people use now. Never give a sucker an even break. So some great cutting commentary.
I'm only ever a repeater of cliches. So one of the reasons why cliches resonate with people is because with a cliche, there's a certain amount of it that we say, oh yeah, we recognize that. But it's a cliche because it's become overused, or it's become used in an inappropriate or a crass context. And this is what we're seeing also now, for example, with the Shannon voyage. At this very moment in time, there's a crowd of 5 or 6 people taking a boat that looks exceedingly imaginative in a health and safety sense. That's the way I would describe that boat, imaginative in a health and safety sense, up and down the Shannon at the moment. But people are, and all of woke Twitter are saying about these lads, oh, they're nuts, and the twatanic, they're calling them, the twatanic. And the appropriate response to them is they don't think you can turn a man into a woman. How mad are they?
So you have your Odyssey channel. Do you have?
Yes, I have my Odyssey channel.
You used to have something on YouTube, but I think you left that. And you have, I think, yeah, and you have something on BitChute as well.
My YouTube channel is still there, but it's I haven't contributed to it in over 2 years because I was just tired of their censorship and their fucking shit. And YouTube is mainstream media now. Okay, it's on the internet, but it's mainstream media on the internet, and it's not what we want to do. We won't spend forever talking about Odyssey, but Odyssey is good because it gives me the vibe. Odyssey gives me the vibe of the original YouTube. So there it is again. If you want to visit me, come and check my Odyssey channel. I'm not monetized. I don't get any money for this shit. So the way that you reward me is by subscribing to my Odyssey channel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also your Facebook feeds as well. I enjoy reading every day. To be honest, yourself and Thomas Sheridan's content, it's kind of like my daily news feed, actually. So I just check it out as soon as I get up. What's Thomas and what's Christian saying on this? The state of the nation today.
He's very interesting. So much of what he comes out with, pretty much all the time, is very interesting. I would describe him, at least from my point of view, coming from where I am, I would genuinely describe Thomas Sheridan as alternative. He got me to think in a very different way from how I had previously been. And that is an alternative, literally, in the literal sense. That's dealing with a person and a whole frame of thinking and a whole way of doing things that is quite literally alternative. He's very charismatic. He's able to converse on so many things, railways, television, building, history. There's so much stuff that he's so fluent about. I let him speak for himself if he wants, but certainly he's a big influence on me.
Yeah, well, I think that the two of you together, I mean, it's a great pairing on the internet. For me anyway, and it helped me immensely during the COVID times, just to have that alternative viewpoint, because we weren't getting it from the mainstream, that's for sure. So with all this in mind, Christian, I just wanted to scratch your great mind on the recent shenanigans that's going on in Montrose, on the happenings of RTE and what passes for the media and public service in Ireland these days. And also we'll have a discussion about the alternative media as well, and where we can go from there. But what did you make of the whole happenings in RTE at the moment with Ryan Tubridy and all that shenanigans?
What do you make of them?
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of RTE, so I actually think it's great to see them getting a kick in the bollocks, as we say. So it's a bit of sport, I think, and I'm enjoying them, and I'm enjoying seeing that people are finally realizing that it's all a shit show, and it's good to see that they're losing money as well, and people are refusing to pay the television license. 4 out of 10 at the moment, I think, is the latest numbers, and it's for the way they treated the Irish people during the COVID and the propaganda that they come out with. It's good to see, but I do wonder why is it happening? Why is it being seemingly taken down, or at least some of the stars have been taken down?
I would
So,
always urge people to avoid being too tinfoil hat and seeing a conspiracy theory around every corner. So, for example, in human resources, there is the reality that you should never accuse malice where in fact you can just say, well, it was incompetence. And I think that there's RTE and incompetence are bedfellows. So the notion that there would be incompetence in RTE, that goes without saying. I suspect that a decision had been made to either curtail Ryan Tubridy or maybe even to get rid of Ryan Tubridy. And it was like doing a controlled demolition on an office block, which ended up demolishing the entire neighborhood. And the reason why that has happened in RTE is because of what you could describe as hive mind, or what could otherwise be described as groupthink. They genuinely did not know how much antipathy there is to them and how long-standing that is. So it's not, what you said about COVID there, or to COVID as we call it here, what you said there is valid, but it's certainly to COVID, and their conduct to COVID is only a subset of their disgraceful conduct over very many decades. There's a guy on Twitter called BenBurb93.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Oh, he's really good. I don't know who he is. I suspect he's Kevin Myers. If he's not Kevin Myers, he's doing a fucking good impression. And he said, imagine a crowd of people standing at a bus stop, and the crowd of people are the Irish people in the 1970s and 1980s, and they're being harangued by a drug addict or a drunk or a crackhead going, and you crowd of fucking bastards. And that crackhead or drug addict is the Irish media and political establishment from the 1980s onwards, who have been telling them, oh, you're all bastards and you're all wrong and all of that. And that I thought was a beautiful analogy. The majority of Irish people just don't buy the fucking crap RTE come out with. They've never been into it. And RTE are like that drunk at the bus stop. They are gone in the head. And you must understand, and a fundamental platform or fundamental tenet we've been sticking to is that they're insane, and that they are literally insane. And part of that is that they believe their own propaganda.
What do you think of the timing of it all, though? I call him Tubridy. I can't help but not call him Tubridy, but he was the golden boy, and he did a good job on COVID, pushing the propaganda. So it was a bit of a come down all of a sudden, I think. So,
and until we understand how COVID works, it's a lottery. So why would you take the risk? This thing has driven a stake through the heart of who we are and how we live our lives for over 6 months now, and we're all putting a brave face on it. But allow yourself to smile when I tell you that this will end. It doesn't feel like it sometimes. It's exasperating. It's existential. It's challenging. But it will end. I promise you. Until then, I beseech you, please don't let those early sacrifices that we all made so willingly, with pride, with humour, and with honour, to be in vain. And don't let the over 2,000 lives already lost from this desperate, desperate thing on this island be in vain. Don't stop washing your hands. Don't stop keeping your distance. Don't stop wearing the masks. Don't throw in the towel. Don't give up on it. The vaccine is coming. We're almost there. I'm sure of it. It's a case of hold.
Well, there's
is the timing suspicious?
There's a moral to that story there. You're always expendable. You're always expendable. So Turd Mickey, as I call him on this channel, Brian Turd Mickey, you're always expendable. And he did the good thing for 3 years regarding to COVID. And he said all the right things, and he frightened the right people, and he brought the right people on to the show to promote the right shit. And then at the end of it, they said, okay, Turd Mickey, fuck off now. Oh, we'll give you a few quid there, but fuck off.
Yeah. So, and Claire Byrne as well, she's kind of stepped back a little, the other big star during the COVID years.
I have to be frank with you and say, from my point of view, I'm not interested in them. So Turd Mickey or Byrne, or like Joe Duffy a few years ago in 2018, Duffy gave me a very fair interview on Liveline. He gave me a very fair interview. So I always will remember him slightly fondly for that. Something else that I will remember Joe Duffy slightly fondly for is that last year on Liveline again, he gave 3 days to the Countess. And The Countess are a group who are questioning the trans cult. That's the best way to put it. The Countess are very moderate, conservative, primarily women, but I support them. They're conservative, moderate women who are saying, no, we can't turn a man into a woman. And secondly, to our, which is my opinion as well, that you cannot turn a man into a woman. Please stop ideologizing our schools, our workplaces, our media, and every forum we fucking find you in. So, for example, there was International Women's Day this year, which is a crock of shit anyway. I wouldn't take that too seriously, International Women's Day. But who was addressing the Oireachtas but your man Kevin Carroll or Lilith Carroll or Kiva or whatever name he's made up this week? You know, and like, he's a very unsavory individual, Carroll. He's a very unsavory individual. And there he was on International Women's Day addressing the Oireachtas in Women's Matters. And I remember one real woman put on Twitter, this time you have really outdone yourselves.
Well, I remember you mentioning it a few times with the Joe Duffy and the criticism of Tenny, I think it is, and the LGBT Ireland. And it was a kind of a breaking of the seal of the agreement between RTE and these groups. I mean,
I'll tell you something interesting that happened last year. After the 3 days of the Countess appearing with Joe Duffy on Liveline, RTE, to their credit, refused to pull that. And I'm a major critic of RTE. I'm a major critic of RTE. But on that one occasion, they did not drop the ball. They refused to pull it. And then there was a statement from Dublin Pride saying that they were repudiating or renouncing their strategic partnership between a woke NGO and RTE. What the fuck? What the fuck is that about? That an NGO has a strategic partnership with RTE, and they say it openly, and it's an official position taken. So that, to my mind, is an immediate breach of whatever charter RTE was created by. And that began to get people to look a lot more closely at who the fuck these NGOs are, what they're promoting, and who has been promoting them, including RTE. But I will say this, and I say it, I qualify it very heavily, but I will say this. RTE left the Countess on air. They did not pull them. They did not apologise. And then there was an Oireachtas. There was an Oireachtas hearing or an Oireachtas committee to discuss this. And RTE were to come in and talk to the Oireachtas about what they had put out on air. And RTE politely told them to fuck off. And I saw there an older strain of RTE, of journalists who are going to say, no, fuckface, you're not going to tell us our job. And that was commendable. And RTE, even to this day, deserves to be praised for that. And I say that to give an element of balance, because otherwise I think they're shit.
Yeah. Well, perhaps there is some good people within the organisation that...
I think what happened was that the stridency of the troons, the transgender goons, troon is transgender goon. I think that the stridency of the troons at a personal level got one or two people's backs up in RTE, and they just said, fuck off now. You know, we've pandered to you cunts now. We've pandered to you cunts for the past 15 years. You know, everything you fucking ask for, we give you. You know, everything you fucking demand, we've pandered to, and it's still not good enough. And you're still fucking whinging about the shit we're putting out in there. Fuck off. And it gets to that point with the cult, because transgenderism is a cult, and the troons are a cult, you know?
Okay, just to bring it back a second, Christian, just if we focus on RT, like what, I mean, it's a big question. What's wrong with RT? We could be here all day, perhaps. What do you think is essentially wrong with RT? Why? I mean, if you talk to anybody, everybody hates them. I mean, they're not producing any good content, really, that anybody wants to watch. There seems to be a lack of real talent. At least it's the talent they do have is focused on a very small area around Dublin 4 and its surroundings. It's all friends of friends and relatives that are, you know. And
okay, what's wrong with RTE? I'll explain what's wrong with RTE. Let's have a little bit of history here. RTE television sharing started in 1960 under Sean Lemass. Eamon de Valera didn't want a television station. But Lemass became Taoiseach then. De Valera was then being looked at being elevated to the Phoenix Park as president. So the man in charge was Sean Lemass. He wanted to modernise Ireland. In many regards, he was quite a positive. Not entirely. but in many regards, Lemass was quite a positive influence in Ireland. And he said it would be a good idea to have a television station. So Televisharing got started around 1960. Charles Mitchell was the first person on air. That's a little fun fact on Televisharing. And I think he came from O'Connell Street. And it was an exciting moment. Ireland got its own television station. And then later on, they rebranded it as Radio Televisharing. So we had Radio 1, we had RTE Radio. And we had RTE Television. Then into the 70s, I think they went for, I don't know when they did Radio 2, which would become 2FM. Then in 1978, a decision was made to create a second television station by the Irish government. And they created RTE2 rather than creating a competitor. That was a disaster. That was a very, very, maybe, I mean, you'd like to say, was that a mistake? Or was that their agenda playing out, in fact? It was not a mistake. It was deliberately to put RTE into a position where it would capture the imagination of the people. Now, by 1977 or 1978, RTE had gone colour and people watched RTE, particularly if you lived outside of the areas where you could watch the British channels, then RTE was all you had. But I do not believe that it had the hold that it had in the nation until it became more cemented in the 1980s. A boyfriend of mine told me he came from Tralee, a fella I was with for a while. He came from Tralee, and even up to the 1990s, they only had RTE. They didn't even have TV3, missing nothing. But, you know, they only had RTE on their telly. They didn't have the BBC or any of that down. And, well, Tralee is far away. So, I could well believe that. So RTE got its foot in the door of the imagination of the Irish people. And this again now, what Thomas Sheridan and a lot of us are observing now is the way that you beat the enemy is psychically. You don't beat them by being violent. You don't beat them by going on stupid fucking protests. You beat them by demoralizing them and by not letting them demoralize you. And RTE had captured the imagination of the Irish people, and it had two channels, RTE1 and RTE2. Then they got Radio 2. And it was up to the 1990s, RTE had a complete legal monopoly on all broadcasting in the state. You know, there was no private radio stations. There was no second channel or third channel or fourth channel. Then in 1996, RTE got a third channel, Television na Gaeilge. And that was then rebranded later on as TG Cahir. And in 2009, very sensibly, TG Cahir left RTE. And TG Cahir is not part of RTE. And my Christ, you can see the difference. And TG Cahir also does not produce any programs. TG Cahir is merely a publisher broadcaster. It produces its news. So if you look at TG Cahir studios in Ballynown in County Galway, it has one studio for the news. It has a continuity suite. And that's it. And, everything else on TG Cahir is bought in. And this is why their programming is so damn fucking good on TG Cahir. Everything they come out with is good. And it's a really, really good broadcaster, TG Cahir. Really, really good. And there's nothing cringe about their shit. You know, they've done shows at Daniel O'Donnell, which are absolutely world class. You know. Yeah. Why did you laugh?
No, well, I do like Daniel. I do like Tina G. I agree. I laugh because probably most people would laugh at that, I think.
Why did you laugh at Daniel O'Donnell?
Because he's kind of like old style, traditional Irish music. Yeah, I do know the show you're talking about.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Daniel is very old style, very old school in that he's able to perform live at the drop of a hat. He's not afraid to perform live. He is accustomed to performing, not to using backing tracks or to lip syncing, but to performing with live musicians. I believe as a performer, as a singer, as a presenter, he's one of the best in the English-speaking world. And I think he's an immensely talented man, Daniel O'Donnell. He's an Americans love him because he's so charismatic. And he's extremely charismatic. I remember during the worst of the lockdown, we'd be watching TG Cahir, Mum, Dad, and myself. And the Daniel, you'd say, I responded the way you did a bit earlier. Oh, yeah, Daniel O'Donnell, yeah. And within 5 minutes, God, he's fucking brilliant. He's absolutely fucking brilliant.
So you're saying that it's basically RT had a hold on the nation. They brainwashed us for 20, 30 years.
Never
And
brainwashed me. They never brainwashed me because as a child I watched British telly, and I mean,
yeah,
where I live in Howth, we got British telly. We got Ulster
mm,
Television, BBC One, BBC Two, Northern Ireland, and then later into the 1980s, Channel 4. And once Channel 4 came on air, I was lost. That was the
yeah.
end of me.
Well, I've the same. I had Channel 4. I don't know. I like the Word. Did you look at the Word when I was on?
The third.
And Eurotrash TV late at night. It was kind of after the Late Late Show. Maybe you'd switch over.
Yeah. You've revealed something on yourself there. You watched the Late Late Show. I never watched the
And,
Late.
yeah, well, I did, because it was that stable diet of Irish TV, wasn't it? Your mother would look at it,
I
and
never watched it. We never watched it in this house. It was too boring. Yeah, it was too boring. And if there was something really fucking shit hot on the Late Late Show, people would be talking about it, get into the newspapers, or there'd be repeats of it on telly later. Because nobody does repeats like RTE. So it would be fucking repeated if there was something shit hot on the Late Late Show.
Yeah,
The toy show got started in the Late Late Show legitimately as a means. This was back in one channel TV land of allowing parents to see alternative toys that were not getting advertised by. So, for example, let's go back to the 1970s and the 80s. Parents would see toys that might be nice for their children because a wealthy company had bought advertising space on TV and had bought advertisements in magazines and newspapers. So the toy show was done to give alternative toy providers or toy makers an opportunity to get on. And I always remember myself and some friends thought Gay was very arrogant to somebody who had made a nice wooden duck that laid eggs. It was this nice model duck that laid eggs, and Gay was quite dismissive, where we all said, no, that's a nice thing. Gay could be very arrogant when it suited him. Gay was no fucking saint. Gay was no fucking saint. But I remember it stuck. Even we were only kids at the time. We said, no, that looked like a nice toy. And you know what? The person probably sold loads of them because people had been pissed off by Gay's attitude. So that's in a way, it's reverse psychology. I remember though it was a wooden model duck that laid little wooden eggs, and the eggs were nicely crafted, and the duck was nicely crafted. It was very nicely made, not so much a toy, a model, I'd say. And Gay was very well. What would a child be doing with this? Fucking shove it up your ass, Gay. Go up to that house and fucking hello. What would you? Those little eggs would be just the right size, Gay. Yeah, But that was how that was the legitimate precept of the toy show, or was it? Had they decided from the start to get children onto an adult show? Because the Late Late Show was an adult show, so the toy show was the one show each year where children would appear in the Late Late. There'd be the Billy Barry kids, and there'd be song and dance, that kind of thing. But also there would be the precept of the toy show was toys, that an alternative view of alternative toys that a parent who might want to get something a bit different for a child wouldn't necessarily have an opportunity to see. It has now turned into this grotesque fucking monster. And that is also in the context of the fact that any parent who wants to get a toy for a child now can, like, the amount of information available to a concerned parent now is in abundance. The need to go on the Late Late Show kind of in early December or late November to see what might be available, that's gone. But RTE being RTE will never kill. RTE do not have the good sense to know when to end a program that has run its time. That's another classic RTE feature. When Gay retired from the Late Late, that was time to retire the Late Late, not RTE.
Well,
they're still fucking whipping the Late Late horse. That horse died 25 years ago, and they're still flogging it. They're now going to give him guilty. He's a fucking idiot to take it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, Pat Kenny then, and then Ben Purgedy was disaster.
Kenny was not a disaster.
Kenny
was not a disaster on the Late Late.
Oh, I thought he was pretty wooden. Would you not say he was pretty wooden?
Kenny, I actually thought when Kenny got serious on the Late Late, he could get very serious. And Kenny also, don't forget, has a modest academic background, I suppose, like myself, to the extent that Kenny was not intimidated by academics, when Gay Byrne would see an academic, let's take the worst example of a Dr. fucking Eben Joseph. You know, that is the classic example of the quack crank academic. And like Gay would just fucking wet his pants when he would come across some cunt with a PhD, where Pat Kenny wasn't. And I'll say that to Pat Kenny's credit. Pat had been to university. I think he did a degree in science or something. I don't know if he practiced at all. But like myself, I mean, I've been to university myself. I have 2 master's degrees. The only reason why I mention it now is that I'm not impressed by academics. Where Gay, you know, Gay was. And that was a little bit excessive. Academics aren't celebrities. They're just people who manage to pass fucking exams, you know? So Pat Kenny, I remember he was quite watchable when he did the Late Late. But Tubridy was a pile of horse manure from the start to finish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the razzmatazz and show business probably wasn't Pat Kenny's forte. It was more the serious side of things.
No harm in that.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Christmas Toy Show.
Get up there with that Kenny, you good thing.
Gavin, you've been road testing the Motherload, the Toomey 690.
It's deadly.
But of course, in terms of its functionality and beyond... Stop that. Beyond its obvious digging capability, what else can this toy do?
Well, I bump it into things and I put my Action Man in it and pretend it's a tank.
But it's not a military toy, not properly camouflaged, leaving your Action Man exposed, surely.
Ah, Jesus, Kenny, what do you like, you big wanker? He only wants to play with it, not invade Iraq.
No. I mean, that's totally lacking liturgity. It's just all one big pantomime, it seems.
Yeah, there's no gravitas. There's no gravitas with Tubridy. And something that I remember when the pay scandal started, there was a clever letter in the Irish Times. You know, considering that Ryan Tubridy spends all of the time on radio talking about himself, for the first time now he might actually say something we want to hear. I thought that was a killer letter in the Irish Times. The Irish Times letters page is a fucking great medium because you will still see educated, clever, competent Middle Ireland that doesn't get onto RTE at all. You will see a class of person, like Una McGurk would be an example of that. Senator Sharon Keoghan would be another example of that. Ronan Mullen, to an extent, would be an example of that. These are the Burkes. The Burkes are an example of that. These are educated, serious people who don't get a platform.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that no one from the mainstream media thought it might be a good story to even interview Eunice Burke. I mean, that's amazing, considering.
I won't say.
It wasn't really only a story in Ireland. It kind of media abroad were even talking about it. So
it was of international significance, the Enoch Burke thing, because John Waters has said this as well. However, people might like to explain the legalities of why Enoch Burke went to jail. Ultimately and fundamentally, the name of the LGBT goons, as John Waters puts them, or the protection racket as he describes them, that was above the door of this one. And that's right. John is right. You can talk about the legality of why Burke was imprisoned or why there was this whole continuing saga of litigation, which is still happening. And I was in court actually in March for when the Burkes really ripped the fucking place up. It was fucking brilliant. And, you know, I shook their hands. I'm one of the very few people who actually did manage to say hi to the Burkes. And they're nice people, but they're serious people. And, you know, don't buy into the notion of laughing about the Burkes. They're fucking awful serious people, the Burkes. They're not people you want to trifle with. And they're all very highly educated, and they're all very well spoken, and they're all very confident. You look at Enoch Burke, and you look at the rest of the family, but Enoch Burke is tall, he is broad-shouldered, and he's very handsome. And one of the things about Burke is he has that very masculine quality of the man who knows his own mind. He is the man who knows like that quality of his going to jail. There's something very special about that, you know.
Yeah. Man of convictions.
As John Waters has said, then he and his family are laughed at by people who are not fit to lick their boots. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, apparently he was very well respected by the students he was teaching.
Oh, I have no
I
doubt
mean,
about that. I would completely believe that. I was a secondary teacher myself for 11 years, and kids like a teacher who's the real deal. And by that, I don't mean the teacher equivalent of Leo Varadkar trying to be popular and funny and likable and failing. I mean a teacher who knows his subject inside out, a teacher who is sincere in his emotions and intentions, and a teacher who is committed to teaching well. Children will eat out of the palm of your hand for that.
yeah.
I've no doubt Burke was an excellent teacher. I just know Enoch Burke was an outstanding secondary teacher.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard. But that brings me into the next question, really, because it's the non-reporting of stories.
Well, I mean, that's a feature of mainstream media generally. It's not just RTE.
Yeah, you kind of have to half guess. If you look at something on RTE News, you're half guessing what's the real story behind something. Like, I mean, even the recent care home.
Just challenge you on a remark you made there. Do you still watch RTE?
I do. I just watch it for the news. So I do for my sins. Just the 6 o'clock news. Only because I want to know.
You'll be happier if you stop.
I know. It's just that time of the day, you know, when you're having your dinner, and it's just, I don't know.
I mean, I would eat in the kitchen with my parents, and the telly is off.
You're probably right.
Put on music, or sometimes it's very nice to put on music, but the telly, you know, I believe I'm coming much more around to the conclusion that just mainstream television is evil. And what do you do? What do we all say is the first thing you do to counter mainstream television being evil? 1, switch it off.
Mm-hmm.
2, leave it off. Switch it off. Leave it off. So we all get our news from sources like here, the internet. A lot of people get their news from YouTube. Fewer people get their news from sources like Odyssey. Odyssey reminds me of the original days of YouTube, when YouTube was alternative, and when it was out there, and before Google bought it. YouTube is owned by Google now, so you know. Odyssey isn't. Odyssey is an independent, genuinely independent platform, and it gives me the vibe of YouTube in the early days, and I really like it. But you're talking about the fact that you still watch RTE. That's immediately a black mark.
Yeah, okay, that's a black mark on me. Hands up. I know. Come on, Christian. You do report on the Irish Times every Sunday, and you read the papers so we don't have to read them. I know the torture it must be. So it's just to get an inkling of what the other side are talking about today.
That's a different thing. My reading the newspapers is the newspapers don't switch themselves on in the corner of the room making noise. You have to go and open the packet of news. They're delivered in a packet each Sunday morning to the house here. I open them and I say, oh, article, Eilish O'Hanlon, article Brenda Power. Eilish O'Hanlon and Brenda Power are 2 journalists who I have a soft spot for. They can have quite good stuff. You know, if you're following me, I've read out a lot of Eilish O'Hanlon. She's a very good writer. She's a very educated, erudite woman. I think she's damn good. She's one of the best journalists in the mainstream at the moment. So you've actually hit upon something. The differential between mainstream media in television, broadcast media, and print media. And that's a very cardinal difference, very fundamental difference. You sent me regarding RTE. RTE, ideas and questions. First off, what's wrong with RTE? Everything.
Next question.
Everything. And that is, but to describe it, I've said on this platform before, and this resonated a bit, I think, RTE's relationship with the Irish people is a fundamentally emotionally abusive one, and is like that of an abusive narcissistic lover. And when people, and I'm not joking or exaggerating, and when Irish people accept that the relationship with RTE is that of an abusive spouse, then that will change things radically and they will let go. They haven't quite crossed that threshold yet.
Do you think it should be totally disbanded, or
Yes.
is there any hope for it at all, or no,
No,
nothing?
it needs to be done away with. And the brand of RTE needs to be destroyed.
So what could be done then, or nothing? Nothing can be done.
Here's what you do. Terrestrial television is now largely finished anyway. So the notion of, a UHF aerial on the house and putting in a box in the corner and watching channels and shit like that, no. People are now moving over. I have a television in my sitting room. I watch a lot of stuff on that, but it's mainly movies that I bought on YouTube, films that I bought on YouTube, and other internet stuff. That is how it's going to go, and it's pretty much gone that way already, particularly with people in their 20s. They're not watching RTE. They're not going to be. RTE is washed up. Actually, I only managed to get the first part of a Thomas Sheridan video this morning, in which he says there are still newspapers and magazines in the shop which are subsidized by the establishment to create the semblance of normality. But people aren't buying this shit anymore.
Yeah.
And he's right. People aren't buying this fucking shit anymore. And it's the same with RTE. Disband it, get rid of it. And if the Irish government wants to subsidize some broadcasting, then they can buy space on YouTube, buy space on Netflix, buy space on all of those things. The problem, I have not got to the root of it. The problem is that RTE enjoys a monopoly position. So going forward, that's a real media person's cliche, a problematic scenario. That's the language these bullshitters use, though. But going forward, we must be militant to prevent any monopoly in mainstream media ever happening again. There has to be aggressive competition in the mainstream media. And there was, for example, in Britain, between the BBC and ITV, the various different ITV franchise holders, all the way up to the 1990s. That was very healthy in Britain. Now, recently, last week on Hocus Focus, Thomas Sheridan and Sarah Jo Mondaini devoted all of last week's Hocus Focus to the grimoire of the BBC, and it was their best show yet. And they're talking about how the BBC had wormed its way into the British psyche in an entirely different way, and with an entirely different result in a way from RTE in Ireland. But it's the same thing. Those monopolies that those corporations, the British Broadcasting Corporation or the RTE Group, those monopolies that they have must be broken up and never allowed to happen again. RTE is a brand. It is in people's heads. That's why it needs to be smashed. RTE needs to be scrapped. It happened in Israel around 2015. The Israeli Broadcasting Authority was scrapped and replaced by an authority called Kan, which is the Israeli for yes. And there's a new state broadcasting organization, in a sense, in Israel. But they're moving away from an RTE model in Israel, and they're moving much closer to what I'm saying there. It'll be online anyway. Nearly everything's going to be online. And you're also going to have to take into consideration that modern media is a two-way street. So there's going to be people contributing from the grassroots like us, and then there's going to be wealthy people who are contributing using their money from above.
Okay. Well, there's two things then. The TV license, it's taken a hit, losing a few million.
Good.
And you said in one of your recent videos, you called it the license fee is psychological abuse. The big scary TV man in his van up and down the street,
It is. It is.
And so, sorry. So they're talking about bringing in the revenue collected broadcast charge. How do you think that will work out?
I don't know, but I think that they're full of shit. And don't forget that they were talking about bringing in hate speech laws, and what happened there, McEntee. So these people are full of shit.
They might be hoping to get back into government and then bring in all this stuff. I don't know. Maybe they're holding off until the next election, perhaps.
Why are you saying that?
Well, because once they have another 4 years, they can, like, they tend to bring in a lot of laws when
You
they're.
are still thinking in the paradigm that you can vote them out.
Oh no, I don't. I don't. I
No, you
don't.
do. No, you do. No,
I
you
just
do. You
think
do.
Sinn Féin might have a different playbook.
I'm just listening to you. And you're coming from, oh, well, in another 4 years, they might do the same again. Well, they've tried to do it anyway. And yes, in another 4 years, they will try to do the same. But
Yeah.
so what?
Oh,
You know, so what? This is what you're dealing with. And we beat them because we stopped playing their game.
mhm.
By that, I mean, not that we started criticizing them. People criticize politicians, but we stopped taking them seriously, and we stopped an important manifestation of that, and it's happened particularly in the Dublin protests from this year. Where do you live?
I live in Westmeath,
Yeah,
the Midlands,
I can
the
tell.
Badlands.
I can tell from talking to you, you don't live in Dublin.
I live in the countryside, the middle of nowhere.
And the reason why I'm saying that, not to be a patronizing Dublin prick, I do that as a patronizing Dublin prick. Nobody is better than me. You know, I'm a prick and I'm patronizing, but I can tell that you have not picked up on the whole shift and vibe that's happened in Dublin. Because what happened in Dublin from January of this year onwards was that a certain quorum of people realized something. They realized that we're not going to be able to vote them out. And that's a really serious, that's not superficial. That is a serious fundamental shift. When you realize you're not going to be able to vote them out, then you have to say, this is a matter of survival. And we, from the grassroots up, have to think of a plan B. And an example of that now is the sovereign voyage on the Shannon at the moment. And one of them is Andy Heaston, another one is Ross Lahive. There's a woman called Anita Ward. On Anita, I don't think Anita has gone on the boat. Ross Lahive, Andy Heaston, Alan Sweeney have gone on the boat, and two other guys. That boat is the fucking that's the last lifeboat that they saved from the fucking Titanic, that boat, Shannon. Because that boat is such a fucking death trap that they're on, but they're still doing it, and they're getting a very positive response. Now, of course, they're not on RTE. Of course, they're not in the Irish Times. And any mention they might get, for right, the Shannon, the booze, you know, but they have everybody on Twitter is wetting their pants over these 5 fuckers going up the Shannon in a
They're in Athlone. They're in Athlone at the moment, are they?
Go out and ask them for an autograph, but ask them for a selfie. But they are fucking ripping it up. They are fucking ripping it up, because what they're doing is entirely different from the notion of starting a new political party, which Littler did, you know, and all Dolores Callow, these fucking Egypts. You know, they're not running for election. They're going out there, they're going to libraries, and they're holding up books in libraries, and they're saying, this is a book that is available for 12-year-olds that is talking about douching in advance of anal sex. And that's on your shelves. And are you going to justify that to us? And when I've even put it that way, you hear how fucking serious their message is.
Yeah, well, they're creating their own news, really, their own narrative, doing it
propaganda,
themselves.
filthy, paedophile, troon propaganda being sent out to children using our state libraries and our schools, probably from the start of the term. The term starts again in 2 weeks. I was talking to a teacher about that the other day. I was a secondary teacher for 11 years. I stopped teaching in 2012, but you never stop being a teacher. And, you know, you'll always meet teachers. You kind of still hang around with teachers, and you talk the same language that they do, you know. And now, coming in about 2 weeks, they're going to be doing compulsory troon propaganda in schools. Well, man, I don't know how that's going to work.
That's going to be interesting.
But getting back to what I said, you know, the whole notion that, oh, well, RTE needs to reform itself and we need to vote in new politicians. That pendulum has that boat has left. That train has left the platform in Dublin, bro. That train has left the platform.
Well, with the broadcast charge, I just think it'll be another water charges. Like, I don't think it will wash anyway with the public. I can't see it being a very popular idea to push anyway.
I have to answer you candidly and say that I haven't got that far.
Okay, good.
You know, I haven't
Yeah,
been thinking that far ahead.
yeah.
RTE. I'll go. Let's just go through your page. That sheet that you sent. This is like, you know, when you're going on a school trip. Teacher says, "Right, we're going to go.
Look,
We're going on a school trip to Doonary in Kings Court, and we're going to go. Yeah,
I thought you'd be impressed since you were a teacher. I thought you'd give me top marks.
yeah. You know, we're going to go to Kings Court, so we are. And then you get in the bus, and teacher says, "Now, here's the worksheet."
Okay. Do I
Oh,
get the? Do I get top marks?
oh. Anyway, I want to. We will. You've sent a few questions here.
Yeah.
Lack of real talent. Well, we know that. Love of mediocrity. Lack of real diversity. Working class and ordinary Joe Soap. RTE is run by cultural Marxists. So they're not going to have working class people on. They're going to have cultural Marxists on.
And if they do have working class people then on, it's kind of, they treat them like pets, isn't that very nice?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I satirized that on the Shite Shite Toy Show where the kid from Tala Balbriggan, I said, telling filthy jokes. You know, I satirized that myself. Dublin 4 and its hinterland, nepotism and the big boys club. Yeah, well, I mean, what has happened in RTE is over 40 or so years, there are families in RTE, and they have just kept their own coming and coming and coming, to the extent whereby now they have shut out everybody else. Easy. I worked for RTE very briefly in the radio centre. I wrote a play for them and I acted. I got my foot in the door, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I got out of it. Non-reporting of stories. I mean, that's self-evident.
Yeah.
That story of these guys going around the libraries, that's newsworthy. And RTE should come, proper news team should come down to Portumna or Athlone or wherever, and should say to the guys, do you want to talk to the camera for 5 minutes and tell us what you're doing and what this is about? You know? If you look at Portumna, did you see the video of Portumna? I mean, they just fucking blew it out of the water in Portumna. They blew it to bits. The lads blew it to bits in Portumna. Ballybrack protest, Dunleary counter-protest to what? Well, I don't know. But those protests in Ballybrack, for example, like Ballybrack had a real vibe of West Belfast off it. And RTE, the only time that RTE will allow them on, there's four, right? Send Keelan Shanley. There's a new one in RTE now called Tanya Wright. And she's a Ukrainian grifter who fucking came in. She's an economic migrant who came in, Tanya Wright. And she is the new Keelan Shanley. And just, we know, we don't need to even ask what shit she's going to come out with. Does anyone actually watch RTE? Well, you do.
Just watch half an hour just to get the vibe of what they're saying. What are they saying?
Okay. Does anyone actually watch RTE? You do. I don't.
No, a half an hour.
Okay.
On the odd day.
You do. Okay. RTE, during the COVID warriors, propaganda on another level. Well, we know this, yeah. You know. What do you make of the recent RTE controversy?
Yeah, we did that, yeah.
I know something. This recent scandal in RTE is the end of them. And the reason why is because it went wrong for them. And they were not aware of the extent to which they're hated so much, or that they were hated at all. Because RTE believe their own propaganda. So, for example, if you take Amy Huberman's shit comedies, Amy Huberman, they just say to her, Amy, Amy sweetheart, yeah, just you do another script for us. And Amy Huberman gets to put on her shit comedies. They are barely edited. And then RTE describes Amy Huberman's hilarious hit comedy. Her hilarious hit comedy. And then because they've said that, they believe it themselves. So that's an example of how they believe their own bullshit. And then, because they've said it, they then think that that's a proven fact. And the reason why nobody has criticized their position or questioned them is because they don't allow anybody in. What has happened this time is that they have been shocked, I think, or they should be shocked at the outpouring of hatred that exists for RTE. And they're going to do one of two things. They're going to realize that this is correct, or they're going to double down and say more Leo's alleged. Just we need more. I mean, there was a good thing on Dr. Harold News, which is quite good satire. Leo Varadkar urges people to keep paying their TV license, or RTE won't be able to rehire Ryan Tubridy.
That could be a true story. Who knows?
I could hear people in RTE saying that. I could hear people in RTE saying that. And, you know, they don't grasp that people don't like Tubridy. And
no,
that Tubridy isn't talented. You know? Yeah, it is. It's what I've said. Leo's alleged. I actually remember John Williams, when he was the head of news and current affairs. He said this next remark seriously. He said, RTE, if they got more subsidy from the government, they would be able to give the viewers a 1 hour a week program on climate change. I said,
they kind of do that already.
These people are completely cuckoo. So no, the problem with RTE is that they don't have to compete. So they get huge, vast state subsidy. They get all the money from advertising. We've seen now that RTE being allowed to do advertising is the reason why the BBC was not allowed to do advertising. It's profoundly corrosive and corrupting. And
they have people double jobbing in advertising as well.
Yeah. But this should not be a surprise to us that RTE is a corrupt organization. Gosh, who'd have fucking thought? It needs to be scrapped, completely scrapped. They need to sell that premises that they're on in Dublin 4 and move. I don't know. I think premises around Shannon Airport will be quite good because Shannon Airport is accessible by roads. There's a railway line not far from Shannon Airport, the Ennis railway line. The Limerick to Galway railway line is not far. I think there's thousands of acres to spare near Shannon Airport. You know, put in a new broadcast centre there. That's like the situation in the United States, or that's like the situation in Britain. No broadcaster owns the facility. The facilities are owned separately, and you hire those facilities when you want to do a show.
Okay.
And, you know, that's how it's now working in Britain. And that's what we should do here. You know, there is nothing about RTE that you could honestly describe as a model of excellence and say, well, look, this is where RTE blew it out of the fucking water here. You know.
So Christian, what about the alternative media in Ireland? I feel that even though Ireland's a relatively small country, I think we have quite a healthy and good alternative media.
That's our real media now. That's what's happening now.
You know, like Gript Media, Irish Inquiry, myself and Thomas, John Waters, the Burkean I like, the West Awake. You know, as you said, Dr. Harold News is quite entertaining. The importance of humour as well.
But humour is very important, and this is where you also notice that the woke can never do humour. So they're
the power of memes.
Like the woke are trying to do memes and videos about the lads in the Shannon, and they are woefully unfunny. They are woefully unfunny. And the lads in the Shannon are pissing themselves laughing at this. A sign that a person has crossed the charisma line is the more the woke try to jeer these fellas in the Shannon, the more the Shannon lads are amused by it. So that's a sign that they're now growing in their confidence and growing in their charisma, you know. But that's right. I mean, satire and humor and memes and all of that, they're essential to what we're doing, which is why McEntee was trying to get through those hate speech laws. I just want you to join the dots about the hate speech laws for a second. They assumed that by now, today is the 12th of August, 2023. Fine Gael, because Fine Gael is behind all this shit, really, and the Greens. They were acting on an absolute assumption, which is the same cult hive mind that RTE thinks everybody loves Ryan Tubridy. They absolutely knew in their own heads that the hate speech laws would have passed the president by now, the 12th of August. And they didn't think of a plan B. One of the tropes I have on my channel is the whole Irish establishment has pinned everything on the paradigm of Leo's allege, and they don't have a plan B, because how can there be a plan B when you know and we all know that Leo's allege? That's where they're coming from. Leo's allege and a bit more Leo's allege. Maybe plan B might be Keelan Shanley, a bit of that, but other than that, Leo's allege. And that is precisely why this whole establishment assumed that the hate speech laws would just, they'd be passed through the Dáil, rubber stamp, passed to the Seanad, rubber stamp, passed to the president, rubber stamp, end of. And it also it testifies to the extent that they view the Irish Parliament as a rubber stamp, which it largely, but not completely is. Why is it not completely a rubber stamp? Because the Seanad did what it had to do, and the Seanad delayed the hate speech laws. It only delayed them, but that was all it had to do. By the way, remember Fine Gael wanted to get rid of the Seanad, and now we have seen why we need to have an upper house. Now, to finish my point, in September coming, they're going to be starting the Troon propaganda in the schools.
Okay.
Later this year, they were talking, they're not talking about it now, and it's less likely now than ever, about a referendum regarding privacy. So the privacy referendum, and I analysed this, was not confined to housing. The privacy referendum would destroy the concept of having any privacy for yourself, your family, your property, or your home. So the privacy referendum would mean that the Gardaí could come to anybody's home without warning, without a warrant, for any reason they wanted to, and seize anything they wanted to. That's the truth. And what the Irish people analysed with McEntee's hate speech laws was that that was the same thing. And people in this country got very, very alarmed when they looked at those hate speech laws, because they saw in those hate speech laws what I had previously been warning people about regarding the privacy referendum, that it's to get rid of privacy and your right to privacy on your mobile phone or your computer or your telephone or your tablet. And, you know, there's a contentious issue at the moment between me and somebody who wouldn't let me leave a premises till I'd shown him my phone. And now a file has been sent to the DPP against him. You cannot arrest people without it being lawful. You cannot demand access to people's phones and things without it being lawful. And McEntee is just a stupid fucking dumb country gash. That's what I would describe McEntee. She's a useless piece of fucking rubbish. And she wouldn't think in any way deeply enough to understand not just the implications of this, but how what she's doing is so profane. As far as McEntee is concerned, Leo's allege, shut the fuck up and move on. And they did not expect the Seanad to fucking burst their tires, which it did.
Okay.
So this is why now the schools are resuming in about 2 weeks. The hate speech laws are not in place. And the likes of Heasman and all of them are going up to Shannon, showing people the filthy books in the libraries that are going to be in the schools. And they cannot use hate speech laws against them because the hate speech laws have not passed. They are fucked.
Okay. Okay, well that's good. That's good.
Let's go through what you've written here. Why are we winning? We're winning because we're right.
Okay.
We're winning because we're right. And then the rectitude of our position is what carries everything else over the line. You noticed a breaking of the seal. Joe Duffy, criticism of Tenney and the LGBT Ireland was a start attorney. Yeah, that's right. I did notice that. RTE, the Health Service Executive, pushing for another, pushing for another lockdown regarding RTE. That fucking muppet, Verbal Bowers, is talking about a new brand of coke. Fuck off, guys. And you can even see it. You can even see it in the comments on Twitter, because the comments on Twitter are an incredible bellwether. They're a real weather vane of the mood. People just fuck off, Bowers. Go back. Somebody said Fergal. come out from under the bed. People are having lives. Gareth O'Callaghan also was shitting himself about, there's a new branch of COVID. Oh, fuck off, guys. I haven't had the COVID jab. Have you had the COVID jab?
Nope.
No, we haven't in this household either. It's moved on. Fuck that now.
Yeah, but do you think they'll try it?
I don't know.
I mean, no. I mean, like you said, like, with relation to East Wall, they've already lost now, so let's negotiate. So I mean, the protests in Dublin, it shifted the terminology that they used and the way that they seen the protests.
Exactly. The establishment isn't negotiating. The establishment isn't negotiating. What they're doing with East Wall, Ballymun, Pearse Street, and that, they're taking these people aside and they're telling them why they're wrong, in their opinion. So a meeting with the likes of a cocksucker like Donoghue and those ones, and Aon O'Riordan on those cuts, they're not going to be coming in to negotiate. That's not a negotiation. They're coming.
Yeah, I meant a negotiation on the side of the protesters. I think that it's people power at this stage in certain parts of Dublin, at least.
It is.
You know.
But what is happening in Dublin? You tell me. What do you think is happening there?
Well, people just standing up for their communities, and they're saying enough is enough, and they're sick of everything. There seems to be a dual society where ordinary Irish people are neglected. Yeah, there's a change.
Yeah,
there's
but what is that change? What is the change that? And I mean, the change is taking place very palpably from January onwards. But what is it?
Well, people have had enough. There's nothing else to give. You know?
What I think has happened is not dissimilar to what those guys going around the libraries and bookshops are doing. They're saying, we're not listening to you gaslight us anymore or talk us down anymore. Now, if you're not going to respond, we're going to respond. And the library guys are not doing anything illegal. I want to let that be heard now very clearly. And to Heasman, Lahive, the rest of them, they're not breaking the law. And what they are doing merely is, one, they're going into libraries and asking questions, and nobody's answering them. They're talking over them, they're patronizing them, they're gaslighting them. Nobody is just giving them a straight answer. And the questions that those lads are asking are legitimate questions. Two, they're holding banners outside libraries. There are only two genders. That is not illegal. It's not even offensive, you know? And three, they're traveling on bookshops and they're warning people. They're giving out leaflets warning people about what's in these books. There's nothing inappropriate about that. There's nothing illegal about that. There's nothing aggressive about that. I saw one cunt in a library said the older staff were there when they arrived. The younger staff were very upset. The younger staff were very upset. At fucking what? These guys don't even use bad language. I use more bad language than these guys do. Are they such fucking snowflakes that the younger staff were very upset? At what? Did they witness a car bomb? What the fuck? Grow the fuck up. These are adults in a republic coming in a free society to a public library, asking legitimate questions about A, the content in the library, B, who it is available to, and C, the motives of this. They are doing their jobs as citizens by going in and asking these questions. In a free society and in a free republic, it is the job of the citizen to hold power to account. RTE is clear about the fact that they won't. The Irish Times is clear about the fact that they won't. And all the politicians are scum like McEntee, with a few one or two honourable exceptions in the Shannon. So, you know, what these lads have realised is what I said earlier. You're not going to vote them out. They're not listening to you, and you have to fucking do it yourselves. Now, let's get back to the Dublin protests. What the Dublin protests have done is they've sent a message to, I'll be blunt with you, at least some of the people who are coming into this country are fucking grifters and economic migrants. And many of them are coming in using the spurious pretext of the Ukraine war. And what those protests are doing.
When this started last November in East Wall and spread right throughout this city and this country. And today there are people marching in Mullingar and in Navan. East Wall, then by the people in Ballymun, Zimna, Coolock, Finglas, right around this city.
Is sending them a message. Hold on, fuckface. Don't take our welcome for granted. And that will get back to whatever third world shithole they've come from. And when they get all their free iPhones and that, they'll go onto WhatsApp or whatever they have in their country.
And Mullingar as well, Christian. Don't forget
Okay,
us.
good. Yeah, good. Well done. And that's growing as well. And what the lads in the libraries are doing is, I'm hearing now that there are more protests happening at libraries and bookshops, not being arranged by these guys. Other people are watching what they're doing and taking the initiative themselves. And again, the change that happened from January is that people realized that having protests where you say, oh, Leo, give us a break, or Mihal, it's a disgrace, that's bunk. When you go to those old-fashioned protests, all you're doing is begging to politicians. You are praying to them. These new protests are going to them.
Yeah.
And that's the big, important difference.
Proactive.
Like, if you look at what Heasman and Lahive are doing, they're not protests. They're just citizens going to libraries asking questions.
Where's it all going to come down to then? Do you see there's going to be a continuation of these protests all over the country, and with the thing coming, the schools back, then more parents are going to be aware of the curriculum, the change in curriculum, and
in relation, let's talk about the schools, because that's coming around quite soon now. And again, the context is that McEntee, and there's another worm called Padraig Rice, and Rice, is part of that whole Leo's alleged mindset. He believes his own bullshit and doesn't believe that there's even any chance that there might be somebody who has a differing opinion. And Rice and McEntee were going on about the hate speech laws. And again, they were expecting the hate speech laws to be in place for September. And they failed. The Shannon delayed it. So, A, the likes of Heasman and those cannot be prosecuted. And B, parents who are objecting to what's going to be in schools cannot be prosecuted either. How it turns out in the schools, I don't know, because I never predicted what Enoch Burke did. That was total random chaos magic with Enoch Burke. But it was very, 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 it's exceptionally powerful. The man is a magician, Enoch Burke is. He's a pagan god. I've described Burke as a pagan god, and he is.
Okay. I wonder would he appreciate that.
I don't care.
So what about the future then, Christian? The last question then. More work to be done, or everything's going to be rosy, or it's going to be more of the same, like a continuation?
History never stops, so the story never stops. What happens is everything is on a continuum, and the pendulum goes excessively woke or excessively kind of conservative. And at the moment, we're in a position of flux in comparison to even 2 years ago when woke ruled supreme 2 years ago. It's not like 2 years ago. It's not like 2 years ago. Woke ruled supreme 2 years ago. There was no dissenting voice allowed. Nobody got heard. There were rainbow flags everywhere. There were troons everywhere. There was filth everywhere. That's gone. It's the first year. I mean, they had a pride thing in Cork at the start of this month, and there was not one positive comment on Twitter. There was not. They were saying, when the fuck is this shite going to end? Hold on. We thought that June was Pride Month.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
August, and you're talking about Pride in
August.
Fuck off,
Yeah, they just push it too much, I think.
They've just pushed it too much.
Yeah. So anyway, Christian, that's pretty much a wrap. Thanks for being so kind with your time, and it was great to hear your opinions.
Anybody who wants to do anything for me, I'm not monetized, and I don't want your money. Seriously, guys, I don't want your money. But if you want to help me and support me, keep subscribing to the Odyssey channel, share my videos. I use a lot of bad language. When I don't use bad language, I mean, but I use a lot of bad language. I use a lot of adult content. It's not an Odyssey channel by any leap of the imagination for children.
I don't think you were too bad today with the language, were you?
Well, I can be as bad as, I can tone it up if you want, but that's that's the feature of me. And the use of bad language, the right to use bad language, is a feature of a free society. The right to call
Yeah.
McEntee a cunt is a feature of a free society.
Well,
Those
it's
are all features of a free society.
colourful and
Yeah.
descriptive language.
Yeah, or I mean, my language is in many instances very obscene. I know that. I'm very well aware of that. It's very obscene, but that's deliberate, and I don't care. And it's as much as I care about farting and somebody sitting behind me, I'd say don't sit behind.
Okay, Christian, thanks very much for your time, and it was great to see you and hear you.
Thank you. You're very welcome.